Devas. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, Hare Krishna, dear devotees, thank you very much for joining today. I'd like to seek your good wishes and your blessings so that we can dive into an overview nectar of Bhagavatam 10th Canto, chapter 18 and 19. I wanted to seek the blessings of Guru Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada and Guru Parampara, Gauranitai, Radha Krishna and Krishna Balaram, so that we can try to understand a little bit about this phenomenal scripture, which we've been given this wonderful access to. Okay. So this is text 2 and 3.
Rajavrikadhata evam Gopala Chadma Mayaya Krishmo Namantur Apavan Nati Preyancharirinam Sacha Vrindavana Guner Vasanta Eva Lakshita Yatraste Bhagavan Sakshad Ramena Saha Keshavaha. Krishna and Balaram were thus enjoying life in Vrindavan in the guise of ordinary cowherd boys. The summer season gradually appeared. This season is not very pleasing to embodied souls. Nevertheless, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead was personally staying in Vrindavan along with Balaram, summer manifested the qualities of spring. Such are the features of the land of Vrindavan.
So if anybody's been to Vrindavan, when the sun is out and it's not December, January, you will understand what this verse means. It's hot, and in the summer, it's unimaginably hot. I've been there a few times during the summers, and we're talking about 45 to 50 degrees centigrade, hot. But of course, when Lord Krishna is there, the summer is like spring. So this verse, this chapter is Lord Balaram slays the demon Palamba. And it's, as the chapter says, it's destroying, killing the Palambarasura demon. And whilst playing in Vrindavan, Baladev climbed onto his shoulders and gave him a good thumping. So, description of Vrindavan summer. While Krishna and Balaram were thus enjoying life in Vrindavan, the summer season gradually appeared. Yet, because the Supreme Lord was personally staying in Vrindavan, along with Balaram, summer manifested the quality of spring. Sri Vrindavan was even during the summer decorated with all qualities of spring. So in the summer, usually everything dries up, as we know. But in the spring, everything is very luscious. So the summer, because of Krishna's presence, was luscious like spring. In Vrindavan, the loud sound of waterfalls covered the cricket's noise, and clusters of trees constantly moistened by spray from those waterfalls beautified the entire area. The wind wafting over the waves of the lake and flowing rivers carry away the pollen of many varieties of lotuses and water lilies, which then cool the entire Vrindavan area. With their flowing waves, the deep river is drenched, the banks making them damp and muddy. Thus the rays of the sun, which were as fierce as poison, could not evaporate the earth's sap or patch its green grass. Flowers beautifully decorated the forest of Vrindavan, and many varieties of animals and birds filled it with sound. The peacocks and bees sang, and the cuckoos and the cranes cooed. So the inhabitants of Vrindavan were never disturbed by the scorching heat of the sun or the high summer temperatures. The lakes of Vrindavan are surrounded by green grass, and various kinds of lotus flowers bloom there. And the air blowing in Vrindavan carries the aromatic pollen of those lotus flowers. When the particles of water from the waves of Yamuna, the lakes and the waterfalls touches the bodies of the inhabitants of Vrindavan, they automatically feel a cooling effect. Vrindavan is such a nice place. Flowers are always blooming, and there are even various kinds of decorated deer. Birds are chirping, peacocks are crowing and dancing, and the bees are humming. The cuckoos there sing nicely. This is a description of the spiritual world. It's very, very beautiful. And Krishna is in the center of attraction. Krishna with Balaram entered the forest of Vrindavan as he played his flute, decorating themselves with newly grown leaves, along with peacock feathers, garlands, clusters of flower buds, and colored minerals. Balaram, Krishna, and their cowherd friends danced, wrestled, and sang. Krishna and Balaram played with their cowherd friends by whirling about, leaping, hurling, slapping, and fighting. Sometimes the boys would play with bilva or kumbha foods, as well as various games. They would sometimes jump around like frogs, sometimes play various jokes, sometimes ride in swings, sometimes imitate kings. Lord Sri Krishna would become absorbed in various sports, surrounded by Balaram and all the cowherd boys. This is really fascinating. Krishna, the reservoir of pleasure, blowing his flute, accompanied by his elder brother Balaram and other cowherd boys, enter the beautiful forest of Vrindavan to enjoy the atmosphere. They walked into the midst of the newly grown leaves of trees whose flowers resembled peacock feathers. They were garlanded by those flowers and decorated with saffron chalk. So this is an indication of what Vrindavan was like 5,000 years ago. These waterfalls all but have disappeared. The lakes all but disappeared. And even the Yamuna is perhaps not the original Yamuna. But anyway, we still have a glimpse of that Vrindavan when we go there. Sometimes they were dancing and singing, and sometimes wrestling with another. While Krishna danced, some of the cowherd boys sang, and others played on flutes. Some bugled on buffalo horns or clapped their hands, praising Krishna. Dear brother, you're dancing very nicely. Because that's one of the things that distinguishes him as well from everyone else, his great dancing. Sometimes, after playing so much, they would all just sit and enjoy Krishna playing the flute. Krishna would become so happy when his friends enjoyed with him and Balaram like this. So the lesson from that is Krishna's main job is to enjoy and make sure everyone is also enjoying and having fun. That's God, isn't it? There was a philosopher who said, I wouldn't worship a God unless he simply enjoyed. And that's Krishna. His mood is of enjoying with his devotees. He doesn't have to do any work. So then one day, they were intently dancing, singing, playing, when a demon named Palamba entered their midst, disguised as a cowherd boy. The omniscient Lord Krishna saw through the disguise, but even as he thought of how to kill the demon, he treated Palamba as a friend. He didn't let him know that he knew that he was a demon. Krishna then suggested to his young friends and Baladev that they play a game involving contending parties. Taking the role of leaders, Krishna and Balaram divided the boys into two groups and determined that the losers would have to carry the winners on their shoulders. Thus, when Sridham and Rishabha, members of Balaram's party, were victorious, Krishna and another boy in his party carried them on their shoulders. So this is really fascinating how Krishna would be carrying another Gopa on his shoulder because he lost. Oh, just put that charger in, please. The boys played at catching ball with bell-shaped fruits and round maliki. They played blindman's buff. Is it buff or bluff? Challenging and touching one another. Sometimes they imitated the forest deer and various kinds of birds, croaking frogs, and they enjoyed swinging underneath the trees. In this way, Balaram and Krishna, along with their friends, enjoyed playing all kinds of sports. So this is an example of where Krishna and Balaram is carrying, or Krishna is carrying one of the Gopas. And because he lost. Oh no, this is Krishna here, isn't it? Is it? No.
Yeah, it's Krishna. This is Krishna.
This is Krishna, yeah.
Stop.
So who's this fellow here? Anyway, looks like Krishna. Pralambasura thought that the unconquerable Lord Krishna would be too great an opponent to contend with. So the demon fought with Balaram instead and was defeated, taking Lord Balaram on his back. So taking Lord Balaram on his back. So there's Balaram, but Pralambasura was on his back. Pralambasura began to walk away very swiftly, but Balaram became as heavy as Mount Sumeru, and the demon, unable to carry him, had to reveal his true demoniac form. When Balaram saw this terrible form, he struck the demon a ferocious blow on the head with his fist. This blow shattered Pralambasura's head, just as lightning bolts hurled by the king of the demigods shatter mountains. The demigods repeatedly vomited, so the demon repeatedly vomited blood and then fell upon the ground. When the cowherd boys saw Lord Balaram's return, they joyfully embraced and congratulated him, just as the demigods showered garlands of flowers from heaven and glorified him. So this was the end of Pralambasura. So we can just read this again. Once while they were engaged in transcendental pastimes, a great demon named Pralambasura entered their company, desiring to kidnap both Balaram and Krishna. Krishna knew. So when Pralambasura, appearing as a friend, entered their company, Krishna called all the friends and ordered them, now we shall play in pairs. We shall challenge one another in pairs. The defeated members in Jew fighting had to carry the victorious members on their shoulders. The party of Balaram, accompanied by Sridham and Vrishabha, came out victorious, and Krishna's party had to carry them on their backs through the Bandiravan forest. Krishna was defeated and had to carry Sridham on his back, and Bhadrasen carried Vrishabha. Imitating their play, Pralambasura, who appeared there as a cowboy, carried Balaram on his back. Pralambasura carried Balaram far away. The demon was undoubtedly very strong and powerful, but he was carrying Balaram, who is compared to a mountain. Therefore, he began to feel the burden, and thus he assumed his real form. There he is. Balaram immediately struck the head of the demon with his strong fist, and the demon fell down dead. When the demon fell, he made a tremendous sound. All the boys then rushed to the spot. Being astonished by the ghastly scene, they began to praise Balaram with the words, "Well done, well done." So that's the end of chapter 19. 18, so yeah. Anybody, any questions or any comments?
Sorry.
Yeah, go on, Kamachi.
In the story, when we hear, oh, Krishna lost, and you feel, oh my God, he's so clever. He just makes that leela that he's letting other person win to make the story up, and it's such a enthralling episode. Thank you.
Yeah, it is. And the thing is, yes, Naiman?
We're going to have Krishna and Balaram and the family and Yashoda Mayina, they left Gokul to go to Vrindavan. But there also he was not sort of not being stopped by being harassed by all these demons.
Yeah.
That was the reason for leaving Gokul, isn't it? Because something or other was happening and it was still
Yeah,
continuing.
that's right. They
Oh,
carried
man.
on. Yeah, and then later they went to Nandgaon. That's correct. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had so much problems in his life.
Well, actually, it was all centered around food and lunchtime. Whenever the demon usually came,
Yes,
it
yeah.
was just before lunch.
Yes,
So
around
they
that time.
have a good fight. And usually they'd strike the demon against the tree, and there would be some nice fruits that come down from the tree, and they'd
Yes.
pick up the demon and enjoy the fruits.
Yeah.
But it
Okay.
wasn't a burden for him. The demons were part of the fun, the enjoyment.
Yeah, but looking back, we think that Krishna has had so much trouble in his entire life.
Yeah.
Entire life.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's for sure. He's just, but he takes on the trouble for us, and he comes here, but he also, the demons are essentially his devotees, essentially, because otherwise they have no chance of coming so close to Krishna.
Exactly. So sometimes I think that they must have done so much good in their past life, Sukruti, that they are being encountered by Krishna Bhagwan and being killed and then getting liberation.
Yeah.
Merging with Krishna.
Yeah. Some merge, some actually become his associates in the spiritual world. It just depends on their mood. And like Agasura was a really terrible personality, but at the last moment, he just had a little thought, wow, these cowherd boys are so happy. I wonder what it's like to play with Krishna. And that was enough to give him liberation as an associate of the Lord. So it's quite interesting, very interesting.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing. And Kamakshi, absolutely, the Krishna, and it's not that actually Krishna lets them win. They win because of their own strength. Yoga Maya puts Krishna under that illusion, or sort of a transcendental illusion that he's defeated. And actually Krishna feels the defeat. And sometimes he becomes very sulky, and because he always gets caught out, wherever he goes, he gets caught out because everything lights up as soon as he comes. Everybody knows where he is. So he gets sulky, saying, hey, how come I always lose? I'm not playing with you guys. And then the cowherd boys would continue playing, but of course they wouldn't enjoy it as much as without Krishna, as much as with Krishna rather. So then they would tease Krishna, okay, if you don't come, we're not going to play with you tomorrow. And then Krishna would gradually come back in and start playing with them. It's really fascinating pastimes, how the Lord enjoys with the cowherd boys. He's so close to them, especially the 8 principal cowherd boys, very, very close to them. They're said to be non-different from Krishna, actually, just like the main Astasakis are non-different from Radharani. So very powerful. Okay, so we can go into chapter number 19.
Tahuta Bhagavata Mega Gambiraya Gira Swanam Nam Ninatam Shrutva Pati Nedu Pahashrishitaha. The Supreme Personality of God had called out to the animals in a voice that resounded like a rumbling cloud. Hearing the sound of their own names, the cows are overjoyed and called out to the Lord in reply.
Oh, this is so wonderful. So wonderful. Okay. Swallowing the forest. Oh, fire. Pheromone fire. So this chapter is a very short chapter, actually, 16 verses. And we're just going to do it in one shot. One day, the cowherd boys became absorbed in sporting, and without noticing, allowed the cows to wander into a dense forest. Suddenly, a forest fire blazed up, and to escape its flames, the cows took refuge in a grove of sharp canes. So these cows had gone deep into the forest. The forest fire came about and they had to take refuge in this place. When the cowherd boys missed their animals, they realized, oh, the cows have gone. They started looking for them, following their hoof prints and the trail of blades of grass and other plants they had trampled upon or had broken with their teeth. Krishna called out for the cows. Hearing the sounds of their own names, the cows were overjoyed and called out to the Lord in reply. So often these cows would go away, and some of them were actually very naughty. Krishna would play his flute, and according to the different tunes of his flute, he would be calling different types of gomatas. So sometimes the gomata that wanted to hear their own name called out by Krishna, they would run away. Sometimes a whole herd would run away, like here, they went away. And the reason they would do that, main reason, was so that they could hear Krishna call out their name. That gave them so much joy, because he would call them out with such affection. So hearing the sound of the own names, the cows were overjoyed and called out to the Lord in reply. Anyway, they were stuck in this fire. Finally, the boys found the cows and removed them from the cane forest. But by that time, the forest fire had grown strong and was threatening both the boys and the cows. Thus the cowherd boys took shelter of Krishna, the master of all mystics, who told them to close their eyes. So this time he told them to close their eyes. And it's amazing how the boys always, not just the boys, everyone, the gopis, the elderly gopis, there was always any danger, they would sought out Krishna's assistance. Dear Lord Krishna. They didn't believe he was Supreme Lord, but still there was so much affection for Krishna that they would just naturally, by instinct, call out to Krishna. They closed their eyes, and in a moment, he had swallowed up the fierce forest fire and brought them all back to Bandira tree, forest. Oh yeah, forest, mentioned in the last chapter, Bandiravan, wasn't it? Mm. Seeing this wonderful display of mystic potency, the cowherd boys thought Krishna must be a demigod. They began to praise him. Then they all returned home. The young gopis, took the greatest pleasure in seeing Govinda come home, since for them, even a moment without his association seemed like 100 ages. So this was always an amazing scene. When Krishna would go to the forest, the gopis would be lamenting. The gopas would be joyous. And then when they come back in the evening, the gopas would be sad because they're not going to see Krishna for a whole night. But the gopis would be joyful because it's their time again to see Krishna. Let's read this as well. The cows, being unobserved, began to wander off on their own, entering farther and farther into the deepest part of the forest, allured by fresh grass. But when they entered, they saw there was a great forest fire, and they began to cry. Krishna began to call out the cows by their respective names. The cows immediately replied with joy, but by this time the forest fire surrounded all of them, and the situation appeared to be very fearful. Then Krishna asked the gopas to close their eyes and immediately swallowed up the flames of the fire. The cows and boys were thus saved from imminent death. Lesson. Krishna asked gopas to close their eyes, as he didn't want them to tell Yashoda he ate fire. Actually, I was going to ask, why did he ask them to close their eyes? So why did Krishna eat fire twice? First time he didn't ask the Brijbasis to close their eyes because he wanted to show them the greatness of himself, actually, that even of himself and of the Brijbasis, The Brijbasi himself, because he can do amazing things. But Brijbasi is because even after seeing this incredible act of eating the fire, they still never, it never took over, the Aishwarya mood never took over their love for Krishna. Their love for Krishna was so great, even he does amazing things, it doesn't matter. He's still my son, he's still my, my favorite village boy. And we can contrast that to Arjun. When Arjun sees the universal form, he's in great awe and reverence. He wants to know, where do I pay my obeisances? You're everywhere. Where do I pay my obeisances? And I'm so sorry. I was sitting in the same bed as you. I used to eat from the same plate as you. I was so disrespectful to you. I'm so sorry. But Brijbasis never had that mood. They were always in a different mood to Krishna, towards Krishna, loving the center of their life, but not God. Second time, he asked the Gopals to close his eyes, because once bitten, twice shy. He'd already eaten dirt. They told Yashoda, they gave him a hard time. Now he's eating fire. What will Yashoda Mai do to this boy? So he told them, close your eyes. And as we discussed the other day, it's also to prove, why does he eat fire? He drank fire rather than through eyes. He drank it through the mouth, because when we do yagya, the yagya kund is the mouth of Vishnu and the fire is the tongue. So to prove the Vedic principles are correct, he drank the fire. So this is really very, very interesting. This is to give credence to the yagya. So I wanted to stop there. Okay, Madhusudan Babu. Oh, where's the classes gone? Ah, there. Great. You there, Madhusudan Babu?
Jai, Haribol, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, so but
Sorry.
these pastimes are amazing, especially the description of Vrindavan, and we think that Vrindavan was actually just a forest and all that, but at one time it was really a big metropolis-like city, but there was plundered so many times over the centuries, by Mughals, and a few times before then it was completely on the ground, and then Lord Chaitanya asked the Goswamis to resurrect it again. But spiritually, I suppose, it's always existing, because it's like we think the Brajaraj and all that is, but those who are, they understand this is spiritual, like Chintamani and trees and spiritual. So we might see the material aspects like reflection of it, because we are covered up with Yogamaya, but it's amazing though. So this instruction, I put both the chapters together. It's very similar sort of pastime, but these chapters reveal the simple, sublime relationship between Krishna and his pure devotees. They're very simple, cowherd boys playing around, and they enjoy different sports and games. It shows they were very playful as well, and they totally depend and remain surrendered to Krishna and Balaram all the time. And it's amazingly how it says, in the purport, that the absolute truth, the Supreme Almighty Lord, is actually a young, blissful cowherd boy named Krishna. God is youthful and his mentality is playful as well. So at the same time, we learn about how Pralambasur and the forest fire and all that are dealt with, So it's quite amazing. And actually, it's nice to, when we hear this pastime, when I see a picture of that, there's one wonderful painting of Krishna and Balaram, and all the cowherd boys are running around and playing in the forest, and all the cows around them, and it's very serene atmosphere. Must be so kind of blissful, peaceful. And I like, Prabhupada's prayers, when he's in the Jaladuta, he writes a poem. Within that poem, he's actually saying, he said, when will there be a time when I'll play with you, frolicking along with you and exchanging laddus. And so it's quite nice. I mean, I haven't got it in front of me or anything, but I just remember it now, how Prabhupada actually is lamenting to have that time with Krishna, playing around like cowherd boys. That might be revealing his true identity as well. Is it one of the cowherd boys or what? But in that prayer, I know what's his name, Agni Dev sings that very nicely, and he explained that in that. I was with Agni Dev in Birmingham before this COVID business. I think it was at your son's house. You came. We went to, and he was doing bhajans, and he sang that bhajan. He's got his on his CD, but I like listening to it every now and then. And Agni Dev explaining how it was Prabhupada's mood, of being there, explaining, yeah, it's wonderful. Nice to listen to that at some point.
Thank you.
Okay, Haribol.
Thank you so much. Any questions by anybody? Anybody like to? Tomorrow we'll just do one chapter. It's the autumn season. And this chapter, Prabhupada actually converted it into a book as well. Do you know the book's name? It's a very special book, actually. I remember when I first read it, I was thinking, wow, how can you convert one chapter into a whole book? But it just, the autumn season, it talks about the autumn and the rainy season, and how there's so many allegories from that pastime, that event. So we'll go through those tomorrow. It's a chapter full of these examples. Really, really nice chapter. Okay, so thank you so much. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Now I stop that.